As you probably already know, YouTube Rewind video of 2018 was just released this week, and it was not received very well, to say the least. And I have to say that even though I'm no expert in YouTube Rewind, it was the worst one that I've seen, and one of the most irritating videos that I've seen in recent memory. It starts off merely cringy, and then it goes into this kind of more preachy tone, where the creators are discussing what they want to be in YouTube Rewind.
Can we also give a moment to Asian representation in entertainment this year? Major strides were made.
Here's to all women in 2018 finding their voices.
Foi muito bacana ver como as mulheres cresceram esse ano, elas ganharam poder.
Can we give a moment to working moms? 頑張りましょう.
And I think it's that preachiness that people responded badly to. Of course, I could be wrong. I don't know exactly why people disliked the video, but that's really what annoyed me the most. I could handle the cringy Will Smith Fortnite video game pandering stuff, but it was really the second half of the video where they tried to make it into a really, I want to say political, but it wasn't even really political. It was just
لكل اللاجئين لكل شخص عم يبحث عن وطن.
Annoying. It was preachy.
We're forgetting something.
Meme review. Meme review.
And I think it's related to the idea of virtue signaling, which is something I've discussed before on this channel, but I think it's, in light of the recent YouTube Rewind video, I think it's necessary to go into that. It's pretty easy to recognize in people. It's just an irritating behavior where people will try to make you believe they are virtuous by saying something. It's saying something that's usually quite vapid.
Well, don't do that. Well, eat it out. There's people starving in the world, which I hate. So, and it's a waste, so...
Something that is so easy to agree with, like stop bullying, or people shouldn't be killed in terrorist attacks. They're all things that are they have such universal values that nobody would ever possibly disagree with you. I'm not saying that it's necessarily a bad thing to say, it's just that it's so obvious that it's just meaningless. You're not a hero for saying it because everybody's going to agree with you. And yet you get to feel a little bit like a hero because you've said something good, and you feel like people will like you because of that, that you feel like you've done a good thing. You feel like you've made a difference in the world just because of what you've said. So in the instance of YouTube Rewind, YouTube has made this video where I don't know if they wrote the scripts for these people, but it's either YouTube or it's all of these creators colluding together, but they've written this script where they get to be really positive about people addressing mental health and women being brave, and I can't remember all the things they talk about, but just saying things that are really not objectionable, right? They're not being entertaining, they're not being interesting, they haven't said anything that is insightful or interesting. They're just spouting off things that make them feel good, and I suppose will make a few other people feel good. But they definitely haven't put anything on the line, right? They're not risking anything to say that. They know that it's pretty universally supported at this point. And what's more, it doesn't require any thought from the person saying it. Someone who's virtue signaling doesn't have to put any thought into their opinions. They're just saying things that they know are well accepted, and maybe they've thought about it for a little while, but they're definitely not challenging themselves. They're not looking very deeply within their own ethics to find these phrases, these epithets. Even though virtue signaling is something that I personally can't stand, I have to confess that it is something that I do engage in. And I know that I'm engaging in it, and whenever I go on Facebook and I see some people posting preposterous things that I don't agree with, or that I think are misrepresentative or just wrong, I don't say anything because I'm scared of what they will think of me. And even though that's not a positive signal, the lack of a signal is still a signal. I'm still worried about what they're going to think of me, and I'm scared to step out of the Overton window. I don't want to question things that appear to be positive. And yet I really do think that being truthful is the most important thing when trying to enact positive change in the world. Telling the truth as precisely as possible is, I think, extremely powerful. And being intellectually dishonest in this way, either virtue signaling or just generally being not thorough in your arguments, I think it's damaging to your cause. I was actually thinking about this when I was listening to an episode of Harmon with Dan Harmon, the creator of Community and Rick and Morty, two shows I like a lot. And his show Harmontown is fascinating to me. Politically, he's completely in opposition to me, although he used to be an anarchist, well, rather not exactly an anarchist, but he was just a kind of rock and roll, didn't really care about politics kind of guy, thought that he was against police, against the government. That was all when Obama was president. But then ever since Trump started running for president, and through the Trump presidency, politics has been much more something that he's been talking about. And, fair enough, it's something a lot of people have been talking about. And he's come out as a more, like a Bernie supporter almost, so just a much more left-wing than he was showing himself to be before when Obama was president and everything was kind of going his way. He didn't need to talk about politics. And although politically I disagree with him in a lot of things, and it kind of has me a little bit frustrated sometimes that I can't talk back to him when I'm listening to the podcast, I keep listening, and I keep listening through his political commentary, even though I know it's misinformed and I disagree with it. I keep listening because I know that he's honest. I've been listening to Harmontown, his podcast. He releases an episode every week. It's about 2 hours long for something like 4 years now. And whether I'm right or not to trust him, I do believe that everything he says about what he thinks is a real representation of his true beliefs. And he's not one of those people to hide his true feelings in order to feel good or to just pander to the audience. So in some sense, he's not a virtue signaler, right? He says what he really believes. And that is something that is actually quite rare, I think. And also he's incredibly intelligent. I think it may not be an understatement to say that he's a genius. He's definitely a comedy genius. And yet in the most recent episode, he started off talking about Jordan Peterson because he's got a friend who's been recommending Jordan Peterson to him.
I'm gonna listen to him because you say he's smart, he's interesting, and all this stuff. But I will tell you that every link you send me and every time I Google, it keeps saying like it says from his fans, and God knows people's fans can misrepresent them unintentionally. They can.
How do you know that, Dan?
But it does say things like truth bomb. Jordan Peterson debunks the concept of white privilege, disproves the pay gap, blah blah blah.
And he doesn't like where that's going. He doesn't like the idea of listening to this guy who is anti-feminist and sort of against the idea of white privilege and all of that sort of thing. That's what he said, and I believe it. And from that, he goes on to this strange rant about virtue signaling.
I am not ashamed of the idea of what my detractors would call virtue signaling. I or white knighting or whatever kind of code for that stuff. I don't understand unless you want to challenge society and change it, or go to toe with it, or get paid to talk about it. Why would you want to do anything other than make it not kill you? I do, like the therapist saying, do you want to be happy or do you want to be right? Like, I want to be happy. So like, isn't that what virtue signaling is? Isn't it? So like, if you're 45, white, straight, rich, standing on top of a pile of money, why is it a betrayal? Why is it a bad move to shout down to all the poor people that you can hear you, I'm going to do everything I can to help you. Don't set this on fire. I'm on top of it. People think that it's somehow a counter argument to say to that, you're just saying what you think people want to hear so that you don't get beaten up or suffer. When did that become a valid point of view?
It's a term that he's heard, but he said before that he doesn't understand the term. He doesn't understand what virtue signaling means. And I didn't really know what he meant by that when he said it before. But now in this episode, he goes into it. And for him, I'm trying to interpret what he said, it seems like there is no difference between virtue signaling and virtue. And I couldn't figure that out at first, because it seems so obvious to me that virtue signaling is dishonest and being truthful is the real virtue. Speaking about things truthfully to the best of your ability and precisely as possible that's what's really virtuous, and that's what will really make a difference in the world, or at least it won't do any harm. And that speaking dishonestly and virtue signaling is bad. And I always thought that people who were against the term of virtue signaling were just trying to say that they were being honest, right? They were saying, I'm not virtue signaling, I'm really virtuous. I really do believe this, and I think it really does help when I say these things. But what he's saying is that he believes that saying things that make people feel good and make people like him is virtuous. He doesn't value the truth as its own virtue, the way that I do, and the way that I think a lot of people do. He doesn't see being truthful as a virtue unto itself. He believes that saying things that make people feel good, that's the real virtue for him.
Ignorance is bliss.
I do urge you to listen to it if you're at all interested in this video. The episode is called Ducks Don't Be Gay. You don't have to listen to all of it. The first 6 minutes or so is the bit I'm talking about, and the rest of it's quite funny actually, but if you just want to listen to the bit I'm talking about, listen to the first 6 minutes. I wonder how many people agree with Dan Harmon about that. That's my ramble about virtue signaling. Let me know what you think. Let me know why you think YouTube Rewind was irritating this year. Are virtue signalers really buying what they're selling? Do they really believe that their words are doing good in the world? Or do they just have a disregard for the truth? Thank you for watching, and I'll see you again very soon.
You're not going to do a blog post talking like this?
Why not? It's genuine.
Yeah, but say something then.
It's real. No, I'm not going to.
Okay.
I'm here in Busan, South Korea, with my mother recording me dutifully.